Hi, my name is Rebecca, and this is a series following my journey becoming a private pilot. Today, I'm learning to fly with Spencer. Spencer's worked alongside Brad, and Brad felt that it would be a good idea for Spencer to do some of my training. Learning to fly with one instructor is a huge commitment on their part. They just might not have the availability. I was nervous changing instructors because I really like flying with Brad. I feel I can trust him to get us out of any situation we get into. But I probably rely on him too much.
What else do you want to work on? What do you want to cover down on that you're struggling with specifically?
So for me, I found the landings here at Hicks much more difficult than at Alliance. Like just coming in for landing, I find that it's kind of gusty and we're in slow flight, so I'm not able to maneuver the plane as straight as I want to be, and I always feel pretty nervous about landing here at Hicks.
Right.
It always also feels quite rushed, that rectangular pattern.
Yeah.
For me, there's a lot going on. It's still pretty early on in my experience.
So for this airport specifically, it's definitely busy. It's jam-packed, full of people always.
So Spencer's trying to figure out some of my issues with landing, particularly at this airport. He's going to reference the Airplane Flying Handbook and the Pilot's Handbook of Aeronautical Knowledge. I will leave links to both of those down in the information text.
But something we should dive into, cover as much as you can on Airplane Flying Handbook and PHAC, and look into those illusions, optical illusions, runway illusions, visual illusions, spatial disorientation, and the human factor process and portion of the training, because it's always a neglected area I see in most student pilots.
Okay. I'm still using the Sporty's syllabus to work through all of the aeronautical knowledge that I need to develop, and the syllabus links 2 different chapters within both of these textbooks, so they're very useful.
And we can always widen out and get away from the traffic pattern here a little bit, just to kind of give ourselves some space, and that would probably help slow things down here in this traffic pattern. The only other issue here, whether you have winds from the east or west, the crosswinds here, they're really aggressive because you have the mechanical turbulence between these buildings that are really gusting through these little holes, and it's in that Venturi effect. So it pushes through these buildings and actually speeds up, and you'll have sections of stronger gusts, and it's actually pretty difficult to land here. And today I think I saw traffic already flying using I think it's 14, 15 here, and winds out of the northeast today, surprisingly. So like 07 to 04 variable. So with that, I'm gonna have to be real careful with traffic that's probably used to landing in the south in summer. And they may not be doing what we want them to do, so we're going to have to work around that.
It feels like there's additional pressure. I know Brad took up some of my slack and made extra radio calls for me and always double-checked everything that I did. Now I want to show that I can do some of the procedures all by myself, so that Spencer doesn't have to constantly check my work.
Hicks traffic, Cessna 62901 Golf, left downwind for runway 14, Hicks traffic.
And my first attempt at landing is a go around. Came in a little bit high and it just doesn't quite line up. I find obviously finding this stage of landing really challenging, trying to figure out exactly where the airplane is, how far it is off the ground, exactly what speed. Didn't get it this time. And even though I want this second attempt to go perfectly, it still doesn't. I don't feel the ground coming. It's an awkward transition to the ground, and so we go around again. This is when Spencer chooses to step in and support with this landing. the runway still feels like it's screaming up at me, but he helps me continue to maintain a certain altitude while slowing the airplane down so that I'm able to get to a gradual transition to the runway. And we go again. This time Spencer still has to make a few adjustments. We have to adjust quite a few times to get it onto the ground as gusts of wind come by, and as I don't quite get the angle of the airplane correct to touch down on the runway. After a less than satisfactory practice session at Hicks for landing, we headed out to the practice area and did some ground reference maneuvers. Here I found there was a different criteria between Spencer and Brad's teachings, and both of them felt that ground reference from maneuvers are definitely something that you have to practice by yourself and build up your own techniques. So I guess that's something I will be working on in the future.
Here comes a steeper bank. See how we're getting carried away from it?
Yep.
Getting into the crosswind, so we'll start shallowing that bank out just a hair bit. We're getting pushed away from it pretty good. I'd say it's out of the 100 up here even, not necessarily the 090, maybe the 12 or 110.
And so we spend quite some time doing different ground reference maneuvers, and Spencer shows me how to use some of the app technology to track my ground track so that I know whether I'm creating a circle around a point or successfully completing an S-turn around a road. And we work on one of those obligatory stalls.
Watch the rudder use. Drop the nose, full throttle, very good. First notch flaps. And you're losing that lift, so we add some pitch up there.
Even though I was reluctant to start with a new instructor, there are many advantages, including better availability, different teaching styles, and a fresh perspective on learning. But I know there are also going to be disadvantages. It's frustrating to repeat things with both instructors, and sometimes the way they teach their skills might contradict or conflict or confuse some of the skills I'm trying to develop. So if you're working with more than one instructor, make sure that you're working through a syllabus so each instructor knows what the other instructor has already taught, so there's some progression that you can structure the lessons with. Unfortunately, this is not my last landing of the day. We end up off centerline, so we go around and try again. Again, this landing doesn't look good, we're too high, but Spencer stays with it and keeps guiding me down centerline, and with a little bit of assistance we finally get it to touch down on the runway. I never get to see this view from outside the airplane, and I never really know how far off the ground we are. So here I know that we're coming in a little high, and so we pitch to descend to the runway, and this I think looks good, and then I flare too much, don't transition, and then I just fall to the ground rather quickly at the end. None of those are ideal. And so we're finally safely on the ground
my mind is full of the learning that we went through today and getting used to a new teaching style, different techniques, which has been very interesting. Time to put the airplane away into the hangar and try again next lesson.
Okay, so starting out in the pattern real quick, proper debrief here. Let's see, dealt with the crabbing very well, the rectangular course, right?
Yeah.
Make sure we're holding that proper ground track with that crab angle. And every time was solid, even when we got back and we worked on landings, the same thing was perfect there. I saw no issues whatsoever there. So for the approach, I would just get to where we can turn final from base a little later.
Yep.
But make sure we're not going too steep, not past 30 degrees. I would even say not past 20 degrees, so it's a judgment call there again, and
Okay.
it'll get better as time
Yep.
goes on. Bigger runway will be a little easier as well. Just make sure we're looking at those headings a bit as well on the heading indicator,
Yep.
and that will see what is that 90-degree point, that nice 90-degree turn,
Okay.
a rectangular pattern again for
Okay,
the
that
track
makes sense.
pattern with the runway. So like if you
Okay.
place 1-4 at 90 degrees,
Mhm.
it's 2-3-0,
Mhm.
2-3-0 for the heading, right?
Okay.
As we spoke about. That will really help. And then that just gives you a longer duration to see what needs to be changed or not changed on the
Okay.
approach path.
Okay.
We don't have, PAPIs or BASIs here, so it's a little difficult to know what is going to be safe and too low or too high,
Yeah.
especially at this little runway and with all the buildings surrounding it. It's a bit crazy. Moving out to the practice area, good radio calls all the way around, leaving the area as well, getting to S turns.
This has been Rebecca with privatepilot.guide, following my journey becoming a private pilot. Every like, watch and subscription really helps.